Guten Morgen, my nerds. It is I, Jason, and today is a very special video, mainly going out to 10 beautiful people that have been chosen to test the Edition XS mod kit. So yeah, the kit's basically nearly finalized. It is a grill which retunes them and makes the sound staging better. I might have gone too far. Who knows? I'm going to find out when these people test them. But for you guys, this is how you would fit said kits. So in the post, you should have got a little brown box like this. And inside, you will have 2 new grill inserts with many fins and aerodynamic features on them. A couple of strips of this stuff. And a couple more strips of that stuff in there. Be very careful with these. They have tiny, weeny little doodads on the end there. Just don't snap those off because those are needed to locate everything nicely inside. If you've not seen this, you're interested, have a look through some of our other videos. There's been a few where I've been testing these and figuring them out. But without further ado, let's fit this thing and see how it goes. For this operation, you will need a small Phillips screwdriver and some big old balls / ovaries, depending on your chosen gender. Because, you're pulling apart an expensive pair of headphones, so just, treat it with respect. So, just taking a basic measurement on there, and then hopefully we can compare that before and after the install, and then also get the arias up and compare it with those, as that was kind of my benchmark. Unplug your cable, obviously, and unpop the pad. So just kind of get your fingers under it. There's some clips around, and it should come off. There we go. Yeah, so they just unclip, put those aside. And then underneath we've got, 8 screws, which need undoing. Do not lose the screws, or you're gonna have a bad time. Now obviously this is the driver. They have a very delicate diaphragm, so don't poke screwdrivers in it or anything like that. I've managed to pull my pair apart well over 100 times and put them back together, and they still work. So I'm pretty certain this is relatively safe, because to be honest, when I was halfway through this project, just rushing it occasionally and not paying attention to stuff, and if I was going to break it, that would be the time to do it. But yeah, so don't drop screws into this. Careful with the screws. Generally, this one seems a bit, because it's already got a bit of fabric stuck over it, I think it protects it a bit more. You can't drop things in there as easily. The HE400s, I did drop a couple of things in them when I was modding them and ruined them. So we got our screws out, and this inner bit should unclip then. Sorry, as I said, the other pair I pulled apart like 100 times. It's a bit loosey-goosey. But yeah, you'll have to get a nail under there or a flathead screwdriver or something. Just lever that up, and a bit of wibbling and pulling, and it will unclip. So that comes out, and then you've got a little inner bit in there. If they become separated, just clip that back in. You'll need to put those back in a bit. And then under there, we've got this gasket top and bottom. Just leave those on there. What I'd probably do is press the grill at the top here, and that'll pop out, and then press the socket through the hole, slide that up, and then that whole unit will come out. So far so good. Then we put our new thing in. It just slides in where the grill was, and then press that into place. It's a funny shape, so you have to get it lined up, and then there you go. It'll make some nasty noises, but that just means it's tight and it fits. And again, don't snap off those little alignment pins. So there we have that in there. Corio Yonde. Next, obviously take off the original metal grill, and then we just do a reverse of the thing. So push the socket through the hole at the bottom there, drop this into place, and then carefully lower that down. And those little nubbins that popped out, those little tiny bits, they will make sure the driver is aligned properly with the grill. Alright, so that's all in place there, push down. And then it should just be the reverse of what we just did. So we pop this back on. Kind of just click it into place. Make sure that's all pressed down. and pop your screws back in. The screws will help it all line up. When you put your screws in, what I do is I turn it backwards until you feel it drop down into the thread, and then do it up so you don't cross thread the holes that are already in there. And I'm just doing it like you would with a wheel, where you're doing opposite sides. I do this side, that side, this side, that side, like do it in a star pattern. Don't think you really necessarily need to do that, but it's best practice. Oh yeah, when you're down the bottom here, what you probably need to do is press the socket in to get this to go down properly. And then do the screw up, and that kind of all holds it in place. Okay, so that's all screwed back together, and we have a super grill. Sorry, the one that I've got here looks like it's got some bits from the 3D printer that need pulling off. So I'll probably check that over before. I gave these kits to someone else to prepare. I'm blaming someone else. But yeah, when you get these kits, before you install it, if it's got little stringy bits of printer filament in there, if you have a hairdryer or hot air gun, just put it on hot, run it over that. All those should shrink away. Don't overheat it, but yeah, if you just heat that up a bit, all those little straggly bits of printer filament will disappear. That's normally what we do here. We normally give them a blow over, but I think they got excited when they were putting them in the box and didn't do that. Right, so we've got that. Cool. And that does most of the tuning, and it messes with the sound staging. I was really surprised how much can be done. Like, the main problem I had was the changes I was making were too extreme. And yeah, fiddling with sound staging and stuff like that, it's amazing how much difference it made, just the back of the driver, not the bit that's facing your ear. I was surprised at how much difference it made, yeah, just tuning using just the back of the driver. So next, we have these strips of like a Alcantara, sticky backed Alcantara, and if you're lucky, I will have drawn a line about 40mm from the end. If not, just measure 40mm, stick a line on there so you know where 40mm roughly is. 4 centimeters. 40mm, what's that in freedom units? It's probably 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches. I don't know. Look it up. Google's really good at that kind of thing. And this operation, I'm not 100% certain about yet. The adhesive on the back of this stuff is maybe a little bit too strong, so this isn't easily reversible. If you rip this off, it is likely to take the black shiny surface off the pads. It doesn't really affect the pads very much, but they look a bit tatty if you tear that off, obviously. So this, I'm not sure how you want to do this. You know, if you're not bothered about reversing it, just stick it on there. If you're thinking you might want to go back to the stock pads, what you could potentially do, I've got a pair of scissors, is peel the backing off, being careful not to get it stuck to itself. Okay, and then the bit that you've peeled off, you could trim that down, trim a couple of millimeters or whatever the equivalent is in freedom units off the end. And then a good sort of centimetre or half an inch or whatever off the length of it. Then stick that centrally, so you've just got stickiness on the outside. Just so this isn't as, like, there's not as much sticky surface area on there, and then it should survive. If you want to reverse it, so you can do that. Now then, and that also makes it easier to maneuver because it makes it a bit less floppy. The surprise costume change. That's a bit annoying. The hard drive ran out on the camera, so it didn't record the end of that. But I remember where we were up to. We were modifying the pads, so let's just do that. The good thing is I've tested it and do that thing where you just leave a millimetre exposed. That does mean that you can peel off the pads without damaging them, which is good. So once you've got your thing, millimetre of sticky around the edge, what we're going to do is we're going to find that 40mm line that you drew on it, and we're going to line that up with the seam, and the short bit at the front where your ear is going to be, and we want to stick it on about 1 millimeter below the seam where the two kinds of fabric join together. So you're sticking it on the flat bit rather than on the curved bit where it's curving into the seam. So yeah, about 1 millimeter below that seam. Press it all into place nicely all around the edge, so you get a good seal on there. It should end up just kind of at the top of the pad there. Just make sure it's stuck down and even all the way. Now then, if you have left the back, if you've put the backing on, like I suggested, it won't curl over the edge of the pad nicely. So what I've done is I've taken some scissors and I've just snipped all around the edge to allow it to flap over like that. Obviously, careful you don't cut your pad or your fingers, you know. Consult an adult if you have to use scissors. This is where you may need a grown-up to help. So we'll just put that all round meow. Cool. Pop your pads back on, and it is vitally important that you clip all the clips back in. If you don't clip the clips back in all the way around, it messes with the tuning again. So do that. As some people have suggested on a previous video in the comments, unpopping these, maybe if you unpop one or two at the back, what you'll do is you get a little hump at the resonant frequency of the driver. I've measured it on this. You get a little hump about 40 hertz, between 40 and 50 hertz, and then it drops off after that. So you're going to lose sub bass below 40 hertz. You're going to get a little bit of a bass boost. So if you've got a pair of these, you're not modifying them, you fancy trying a little bass boost, unclip the pads at the back, leave a little air gap, maybe jam something underneath it so it can't pop back in, and you'll get a little hump in the lower bass regions. So that's on there. As I said, I already had to film this earlier. I waffled on, we did all the tests, so that's I've already got the graphs up, measured them against the ARIA Organic, measured the original ones, and we can see what we are looking at. Measured them with and without the pad mod as well, so we can compare those. Okay, so here are your stock headphones in red. This is how they measured. I've applied a little bit of smoothing to these graphs to make them look a little bit sexier, but not too much smoothing. ARIA, here's the ARIA Organic, and you can see a lot of it is pretty similar, but you do get more of a peak around 8K, just over 8K. You get quite a big peak, and you get a bit more energy between 11 and 12K, and you get another big peak about sort of 17K, something like that, which I think is what gives it that airiness up in there. If we now have a look at the fully modded one, if I get that graph up, that's in blue. So you can see we've actually smoothed out a lot of the stuff up until about 700 hertz. It hasn't got all the lumps and bumps. With the modded pads, you do get a slight hump around 1K, which some people are very sensitive to, and they find it's a little bit shouty. I didn't notice it on these, so I think it's okay. But yeah, without the pad mod, that hump goes away. Then we go down. It goes down a little bit lower than I would like. At sort of 3.5K, you've got a dip, which is lower than I would like on this, but if I mess with that, I mess with something else, and it didn't really seem to upset the timbre of them too much. Then we got a bigger peak, a bit like the ARIA Organic, but because we're lower, between sort of 2.5 and 5K, say, it's got a lower bit there. If you have the peak up at the same height as the ARIA, it ends, because that difference between the two, it sounds a little bit too sharp, a little bit too crisp. So it's just a little bit below where the ARIA Organic is, but above where the stock ones are, and that seemed to sound about right. Again, we've got the extra energy between sort of 11 and 13K on there, and then we've got a bigger spike around 17K. So it more closely matches the ARIA's frequency response, especially in the treble area, than the stock Edition XS's. Now then, if I just take those off, and this is with the pads unmodified as in green versus blue, which is modified pads. So you don't get that hump at 1K if you don't modify the pads, but you do get an extra peak up at about 12K, which I found made them sound a little bit kind of gritty in the treble. I wasn't so much of a fan with that, so you can try it with or without. It's easy to remove that little sticky bit. You can probably stick it on and remove it 2 or 3 times when you're testing, but I personally preferred it with the modified pads, but some people are going to prefer it without the modified pads. It is down to personal preference, I suppose. Yeah, the differences are relatively subtle, but I think with the modified pads just sounds better. Yeah, so that's it. I hope you found that vaguely interesting. If you are one of the testers, I can't wait to hear back. You know, have a good old listen. Let me know what you think. I think sound staging much bigger, generally just better, like more involved. I felt like the headphones just disappeared into the thing, and like the music was there, the headphones weren't getting in the way. Yeah, so like bigger soundstage, didn't feel all enclosed. It was more open, bigger soundstage, and obviously retuned, so it's similar to the Aria Organic. I just generally thought they slapped. Like the bass just seems faster and more accurate and detailed. Doesn't really show up a lot in the graphs. Like the bass looks pretty much the same, but yeah, it definitely like. Whew. So I got lost in the music for at least several days just testing these. So anyway, that's that. Another thing before I forget, I don't know if you saw our project update a couple of months ago. We were just saying what we're working on. I've been working on this thing that reduces microphonics, especially in like studio headphones. Just clips onto the cable. This is just about done. The new STLs will be up on our Patreon, on the STL repository, if you want to print this off and have a play with it. But it will be available on our site after in a couple of weeks, hopefully after we've done a little bit more testing. But essentially just clips onto the cable up near the top, and because it's got a bit of spring in it, it reduces a lot of the vibrations that are in the headphones, so you can rub the cable. It doesn't really transfer the sound as much to the headphones, but also because it brings it out over your shoulder, it's not rubbing on your clothes. And yeah, the idea is just, yeah, when you're using the headphones, you don't get the microphonics from the cable, which is quite noticeable on some headphones. But yeah, definitely it reduces the sound as it rubs, like when the cable rubs on stuff, it doesn't transmit as much because a lot of that is taken out by this sort of compliant springy mechanism that's in there, and also having it come over your shoulder. Anyway, it's a simple thing that took quite a lot of designing and testing, and that should be available soon. Just doing some final tweaks, but as I said, I'm going to get the files for this up on the Patreon on Monday if anyone wants to print it off and have a play with it. Files for this are already on the Patreon, along with the HE400 grills and that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you're a 3D printy type, join our Patreon, because you get all the STLs on there for free, and you get to play with stuff that we're still working on, which is kind of cool. But anyway, it's been super awesome hanging out. I can't wait to see what other people think of these. I won't be too offended if you think I've ruined them. That's fine. I think they're great. Hopefully some other people are going to think they're great. If everyone thinks they're great, winner. If someone says I've ruined their headphones, if everyone says it's a bit rubbish, then I know it's just me and I've gone too far. But it's very exciting to see. But yeah, everyone else, because I've let a few people have a go on these and they've been pretty happy with them. I don't know if I mentioned it. This little bit here, the extra bit that will come in the kit. Depending on the shape of your ears, the sound staging may be too wide, maybe going too far back this way. Like you might get some instruments that are just, before I had it when they were very close to the back of your ear, which is really annoying. But yeah, some of them sound like they're coming from over there for some people, depending on the shape of your ears. If you get this bit and you stick it over the grills on the back there, the little air vents on the back of the jobby, that will bring everything forwards a little bit, so it'll be more in this kind of area rather than that kind of area. Just a little extra tweak you can try if you find the sound staging a little bit too wide. The effect is pretty subtle, but it did seem to, like for the people that were testing it already here, James, I know, certainly thought it was a little bit too wide, and that brought it in, and that made it right for him. So anyway, it's been super awesome hanging out. Blah, 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 blah. See you guys again.